ask around. I got to set the stopwatch here so I don't go over, because I don't want to take time that's going to be valuable spent with Mark Privatera, the greatness of all time. You can't believe how lucky all of you are to be here when Mark Privatera's here. And, you know, you'll find out later. I'm not kidding. So my job here is just to start it off, color it up a little bit, talk a little bit about whether you might have what it takes to work at a startup. I've done 3 of them. So my first startup was one of the best and most exciting times of my life. I got to work with Ralph over here. He's going to talk a little bit later. He went on to be successful. I went on to be, well, you know, here now talking about the very next startup or the one after that. So not all startups succeed. Most of them fail. Most of them fail catastrophically and wonderfully. And you learn a lot from failure that you cannot learn from success. So I recommend it. Not all the time, but you should at least fail catastrophically once in your life, because it teaches you a lot about yourself and about your friends. You learn who your friends are. I got to tell you that. And you learn what it takes to pick yourself up and get back to work. So let me just take a little poll here. You know, who thinks right now, without knowing anything about what we're going to talk about, who thinks they have what it takes to work at a startup? Nobody. No. Raise your hand higher, because I'm almost 50. I can barely see. All right, there's like half of you, and the other half are here to prove why you don't want to work at a startup. Is that right? You want the evidence for why you've taken that job at whatever. Let's put the Fortune 500 company here. So I'm just going to go through a few questions and a few kind of comments about what it takes to work at a startup or to be successful at a startup. And so the very first thing I want to ask you is, you know, are you in it just for the money? Because if you're going to go into a startup and think that you're going to, hey, wait a second, where's my screen? Hold on. That's the most important thing. Oh, man. The money tree. I got to put the money tree up there. Let's go full screen here. All right, so there we go. So that's what we're going to talk about is working at a startup. So if you think that working at a startup is just going home at night after a nice relaxing day, some cocktails on the job maybe, and picking money off the money tree and then building out your ranch, and if you're in it just for the money, you know, that's where you're going to be in for a surprise. You will not be successful. So people that are driven by money only should not be entrepreneurs. They should be bankers or something. I don't really know what, because, you know, bankers move money from place A to place B. They don't really add any value, but they move it around, and so for that they get paid a lot. So you should go into banking or finance or something. For entrepreneurs, though, it takes a lot of different things. And number one is it takes being a little bit different. So if you are constantly asked by your friends, hey, you know, what's wrong with you? or you know, are you on something? That's the kind of question that would lead you to believe you might have what it takes. You might be an entrepreneur in hiding. If you are insanely passionate, and not just about girls or boys, but if you're insanely passionate about something, if you care deeply about something, you might also have what it takes. It sounds a little like Jeff Foxworthy, doesn't it? I don't really like how this is going. But you know, you might be an entrepreneur if you're passionate, because passion trumps everything else. I mean, it even trumps stupidity. Do you like to take risks? I mean, do you find yourself wishing that you had gone on the bungee jump in Zimbabwe instead of taking that summer job at Conoco? You know, I mean, that might be, you might be the guy. Are you comfortable with uncertainty? This is something that we face every day. You know, is the next paycheck going to bounce? I don't know. Maybe. You know, I can say proudly that I started 3 companies and hired hundreds of people in my life, and I've never once bounced a payroll check. Okay, now, you know, first you clap, and then I have to tell you that sometimes those payroll checks should have bounced. And so there's another question I'm asking here that it's going to get right to the core of that. Sometimes you just have to do the necessary thing. So are you results-oriented? Do you get up in the morning and say, I'm going to finish my homework, or I'm going to get this project turned in, or do you press the snooze and go back to sleep and say, you know, really, I don't need to turn that in. I've already got the B or the A or whatever you're going for. If you're results-oriented and you know that time is money and that every moment spent thinking about something not the goal that you're on is wasted time, you might be the guy. Are you an adrenaline junkie? This is my favorite thing, because if you absolutely get off on solving problems, if you get off on going out into the middle of the ocean and saying, gosh, I wonder how I'm going to get back. I don't know. I mean, if you want to learn how to fly by throwing yourself off a cliff without any wings or anything and say, you know, I bet you I can learn how to fly. That is one of the key elements it takes to be in a startup. Do you have a bias for action? This is something that I constantly look for in people that I want to hire. Is do they think not so much about the process, but do they think about the results? Do they think about getting to the result? And do they think about taking action in the absence of a mandate? You know, this is what you have to have. You have to have the ability and the willingness to go out and do something, especially if you haven't been told to do it, and sometimes if you've been told not to do it. It's really important to have a bias for action. This is what I mean when I was referring to about the payroll. Will you do whatever it takes? And so there was one or two times that we had to, you know, open an East Coast bank account and maybe have checks go back and forth across the country in order to make sure that there was enough money in all the accounts so that banks would be happy. Now, that was doing whatever it took. Now, those days are kind of gone because, you know, settlement, it doesn't happen in 11 days anymore. It happens in 11 seconds. You know, the ACH clearinghouse is all there. So you can't really do that anymore, but there's other things that you have to decide. You know, if you have to pull the trigger, will you do it? Can you look somebody in the eye and do it? Can you handle setbacks? I mean, how many times have we, you know, seen our baby be flushed away with the bathwater and told, well, that's just, you know, that's just the way it goes. Now we have to do it over. The kind of setbacks I'm talking about aren't necessarily just, you know, holding your head in your hands and crying yourself to sleep on your big pillow. It's this kind of setback. You know, if your entire factory is exploding in front of you and you have to watch your baby burn, somebody on this panel is going to be able to tell you what that's like. You have to be able to recover from catastrophic setbacks. You have to know how you're going to measure success. You know, it really doesn't matter. If you're going to go into a venture just for the adrenaline, that's cool. That's fine. You're going to be working for me. But if you're going to go in and you want to make money and you want to change the world, you're going to have to measure yourself and know what it means to be successful. Does it mean I get to do whatever I want, or does it mean I have a certain level of money in the bank, or does it mean I have financial security in a different way? Does it mean that I have a lifestyle that I'm happy with? How do you measure success? You need to know what your goals are, not just in terms of technology and what you want to accomplish, but also in terms of how you're going to be happy. And if you don't know how to make yourself happy, you have to learn that right away. That's almost the most important thing in life, is know how to be happy. No, I take it back. The most important thing in life is a healthy colon. Okay, but the second most important thing is learn how to make yourself happy. So those are some of the things that you might want to consider if you're going to be part of a startup company. There's one step beyond that, and that is, you know, should I go start a company? Should I throw away this perfectly good job, or maybe quit this perfectly good school and go start a company? Well, first get your degree, and then get your professor to fund the startup, and then go into business with them and give them half. So if you're going to start a company, you should have some of these things. You should be a natural leader. You should, you know, ask your friends, and if you have to ask, well, then you're not. So if you know this answer already, that's great. Are you a natural leader? It's very important. People need to want to follow you, and not because they just want to pickpocket you. Do you have, or does somebody you know that you can take advantage of, have a killer idea? You know, look at Zuckerberg from Facebook, right? He didn't have that idea. He ripped it off. Now, who got all the money? Zuckerberg. Go study that guy. He's a crazy guy, but he got very wildly successful on somebody else's idea. It doesn't have to be your idea. Do you have a vision? Can you see beyond next week? It is not about finals. It is not about, you know, your GPA. It's about something entirely different. It's about maybe changing the world. If you want to change the world in some small dimension or some large dimension, like Mark's going to tell you about how he changed the world in a very large dimension. John's already done. He changed the world in a very large way at Amgen. He's going to tell us a little bit about what happens kind of at companies like that and post companies like that. It's fantastic. You can change it, but you have to have a vision for that. Do you know what your target market's going to be? Do you have any idea who you're going to sell to? So having a great idea is fantastic, but they're a dime a dozen. You have to know not what the idea is, what problem I'm going to solve, but who's going to value that problem and exchange their money for my implementation, whatever it is, software, or it's a service, or it's some kind of a product. It doesn't matter. You have to know who's going to buy it before you set out to build it. Otherwise, it's a waste of everybody's time. Are you easily misled by new cool ideas? Okay, this is not a deal killer, because you can have the attention span of a child and still be successful as an entrepreneur. But you have to have somebody near you who's more adult-like, who can keep you kind of focused and on track and not have you constantly running off to the latest, oh, let's try that. Because somebody has to finish what you start. Do you get lonely? You need to ask yourself this, because if you get lonely easily and you need people around all the time, then do not start a company, because you will be very lonely all the time. You have nobody to talk to. You have no one to seek advice from. Bankers just want to pick your pockets. VCs just want to take all your stock. You know, you got your friends, but they're busy. They have jobs. So if you don't get lonely, if you can entertain yourself, if you know how to make yourself happy, ask yourself these questions. Do you love customers, and do you think they deserve every bit of your energy to make them happy? Then you might want to start a company, because not very many people think this way. And people that think about customers and put them first and second and third in their thinking are going to win, because customers pay you money to do whatever you're doing. And without them, you're nothing. There's somebody else without whom you're nothing, and that is salespeople. Engineers are somehow taught from a very early age to hate salespeople, and I just don't get it. I don't get it at all, but I felt that way. You know, when I met my first sales guy out of college, I thought, scumbag. You know, what's he do? He shows up, he glad hands, he buys people donuts. That's his job? You know, what does he do? Well, I'll tell you what he does is he builds confidence in your product or service in the mind of the customer. He understands their problem, and he translates all the myriad things that he could tell them into those things that he should and does tell them to build confidence and a relationship, because people don't buy from companies. People buy from other people they trust. And in spite of the fact that engineers all hate salespeople, I want to tell you right now, you can do yourself a big favor and you can save yourself 10 years of learning after you get out of here if you just start with the attitude that salespeople are fundamentally good. They allow you to work, they allow you to have a company, they allow you to have a paycheck, and without them, you're nothing. Doesn't matter what kind of ideas you have. So here's another one. You know, are you a cheap bastard? It's fundamental. I mean, if you're, like you said, if you run out of cash, what happens in a startup? You're dead, okay? You have to go home. You have to do something else. You have to get a real job. It's awful. Never, ever, ever run out of cash. So one way to not run out of cash is to be a cheap bastard. Exactly. Very important. Penny pinch. Find ways to do things, or find, you know, if it comes time to pay the bill at lunch and you're at lunch with people that have real jobs, have them put it on expense account. There's lots of different ways to finance your company. It's, you know, my first venture capitalist was a Visa card. And the way that we financed the first set of payrolls was go get several of those things and get cash advances. And, you know, 50 or 60 or 100 grand is a lot of money right at first. And the amount that they charge is 18% or 16% or whatever it is. It's the cheapest money you can get. You know what it costs to borrow money from a venture capitalist? It costs your soul. It costs your entire soul, everything that you're going to do ever again. So careful when you borrow the money. You're going to have to give it back with interest and sometimes with your pound of flesh. Are you a nurturing and loving person? Do you have patience? Will you let other people have minor setbacks in order to achieve the greater good? Will you let them do their job, or will you micromanage them to death and drive them into the arms of another? You have to ask yourself that, because you can't start a company unless you are nurturing and patient, or at least can fake it. If you can't fake this emotion, then you shouldn't ever hire people. So if you combine all that stuff that I just talked about, all the random things, you have to combine all these questions into a pile and put them in a big pile and view them through the lens of my WGN diagram. This is a very important lens. This is what you want to do with your life and what you're good at and what the world needs. And I can promise you that unless you're focused on the intersection of these three things, that you won't be successful. And this doesn't really just apply to starting companies or working at startups. I mean, this applies to kind of life. If you don't figure out that you should be good at something, okay, number one, that kind of goes without saying. Find something, be good at it. I don't care what it is. I mean, Tony Hawk's a millionaire, so give me a break. Find a way to want to do something that you're good at. That's also good, but it's not enough, because you have to also overlap that with something that the planet needs. I mean, the planet needs biodiesel. The planet needs great drugs. The planet needs electricity. Thank you very much. And so I just want to leave you with this thought. Take all that pile of stuff I said, it's worth about $0.25. You can't even get coffee for it. But think about it. Think about it. View it through this lens, and you will know whether you have what it takes to work at a startup. So I'll leave you with that.